Monday, January 29th, 1979. Horror in San Diego. Someone living across from an elementary school opened fire. The ensuing incident took the lives of 2 men and injured numerous others. While a country like America had similar events in schools before this, never did the country suffer from a senseless, meaningless incident quite like this one at an elementary school. The assailant, a 16-year-old girl, was coaxed out of her barricaded home with the promise of a Burger King Whopper. Have it your way?
Charlie Dogwood.
Today, we're discussing a case that's both infamous, but paradoxically is also a case that has become more obscure over time. It's the story of Brenda Spencer, sometimes called the mother of school shooters, who, after firing 36 shots at school children, the principal, janitor, and the police across the street from her childhood home, said she did it because, quote, "I don't like Mondays." However, since then, Brenda Spencer has claimed to have little to no memory of one of the most tragic incidents in San Diego history. Today, we'll go over everything and try to get to the truth at the center of the case. I'm Charlie Dogwood, and this is my channel. Let's get into it. The image of Brenda Spencer being taken to court is truly bizarre. She appears half zombie and half hippie, calling back to the days of Charles Manson. But the story doesn't begin there. Instead, it begins on the 3rd of April of 1966. Brenda was born the youngest daughter of Wallace and Dot Spencer of San Diego. Her family wasn't well off financially and wasn't a happy home either. Her parents divorced when she was 9. And she ended up living with her father alongside her 2 older siblings, who chose her father over her mother. Which says a lot, though it's not like her old man Wallace was much better. Their home on Lake Atlan Avenue was right across from Cleveland Elementary School, where Brenda went to school. The home seemed like a nice place from the street, but on the inside, it was a total mess, with beer bottles strewn about, and with Brenda and her father reportedly being forced to sleep together on a mattress in the living room. Physical abuse was frequent at the home. Brenda claimed that her father had kicked her in the head, which gave her epileptic fits, though her siblings appear to dispute this and claim instead that she got her injury from a bike accident. One of the few ways that she and her father ever seemed to get along was with hunting. The family would go yearly to Arkansas to the home of an extended family member, and Wallace and Brenda would go hunting. Soon she was taken by a fascination with guns, just like her father. We call this foreshadowing in the storytelling business, folks. Even from an early age, people found her odd. She liked to tear the heads off her dolls, and she seemed depressed sometimes, according to some. These odd attitudes made her something of a pariah with other kids in the neighborhood, but she became fast friends with her neighbor, a boy named Roderick Fleming, aka Brant. The two would quickly grow into becoming friends and, even more importantly, crime partners and drinking buddies, with Brenda picking up alcohol and marijuana habits by the age of 12. The pair were arrested by the age of 13 for shoplifting, with Brenda distracting a cashier at a grocery store and Brant quickly palming a box of rifle ammunition to sell out on the street. At the age of 15, the pair were in trouble again when they broke into their old school across the street. While drunk, the pair reportedly sprayed around with fire extinguishers and wrote on the blackboards and just generally caused a mess. It was stupid teenage stuff, but it was part of her pattern. And surprisingly, despite the 2 arrests, she wasn't sent to juvie. Brenda also liked to talk about doing violent things and posing as a radical. She was something of an edgelord, cheering when the news reports said that a cop had gotten shot, claiming to do all sorts of hard drugs, and making multiple plans with Brant Fleming to kill a cop together. Brenda had even talked about doing something really big to get on TV one day, and seemed to relish in this idea of fame or even infamy. These days it's almost too easy to become famous, but back in those days, showing up on the TV was hard, and fame was a rare commodity. She had even bragged about lighting a cat's tail on fire or hunting neighborhood birds, but no one believed her because she was known to love animals and participated in animal photography competitions hosted by the Humane Society. Though at school, she was a nobody. She typically skipped classes, and when she did show up, she didn't really care. From her truancy and arrests, Brenda ended up having to meet with a counselor. That counselor stated, without reservation, that Brenda was mentally ill and was a danger to herself and others, and that she should be institutionalized for her depression that she was reportedly suffering from. Wallace Spencer, her father, didn't seem to care. That same Christmas, when Brenda opened up her presents under the Christmas tree, she didn't get the radio that she had asked for. Instead, she got a .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle with telescopic scope and 500 rounds of ammunition. He claimed that he thought she was ready for it. Brenda thought that he wanted her to blow her head off with it. On the 27th of January, a Saturday, Brenda told Brant that something big was going to happen that Monday, something that would put her on TV and radio, just like she had wanted. At a little before 8:30 on Monday morning, the students of Cleveland Elementary School were assembling in front of the school by a front fence that the principal would unlock for them 5 minutes before class. Suddenly, the sound of what seemed like firecrackers started popping off. What happened next was total chaos. Children began to drop down to the ground, and Principal Burton Ragg and a teacher named Darrell Barnes ran to save the children as the shots continued. Very quickly, Principal Ragg was hit in the chest with a bullet and collapsed backwards. At this point, the 56-year-old custodian, Mike Suker, had arrived and ran to assist as well, likely unaware of where the shooter was. Sakar, a World War II veteran, was hit in the chest and collapsed almost immediately afterwards. No one was certain exactly where the shots were coming from, except that they were from across the street. All the school children could do was huddle up, take cover, and hope that it ended soon. Meanwhile, Brenda Spencer was shooting to kill, aiming for the center mass and not slowing down. By 8:30 a.m., phone calls were being made from the school staff already on campus, and the cops sped to the school. Among the first policemen to arrive on the scene was Robert Robb. A bullet flew at him and nicked him in his jugular vein, bounced off his shoulder blade, and lodged up against his spine. Despite this, he remained standing and worked to save the children alongside the other officers. Soon, the police realized that the shots were coming from the window across the street at 6356 Lake Kaplan Avenue. The shooter, whoever they were, had a perfect view of the area the injured and uninjured school children, as well as Burton Ragg, were taking cover in. Mike Suker was unfortunately already dead at this point. The surviving victims had to lay and wait for evacuation as the police tried to lock down the area, but the shooter just kept shooting at anything they could see from the window. Officer Ted Kasanak commandeered a garbage truck and used it as a shield to block the shooter's view. Now, the police and school staff could evacuate the wounded staff and children to another location, where they could reunite the children with their parents and take those who were wounded to the hospital. Fortunately, none of the children who were shot died, in spite of their very serious injuries. All while this happened, the police secured the area and SWAT set up. In less than an hour, 100 police officers, 30 patrolmen, and 20 members of SWAT had surrounded the building. SWAT snipers had set up watching the front and back doors of the home in case the shooter tried to escape or change locations. These snipers, by the way, had been authorized to shoot to kill. It was around about then when the shooter's identity had become clear. 16-year-old Brenda Spencer, a local high school student. The police scrambled to gather her parents in the hopes that they could convince her to stop shooting and give up peacefully. Now, with the garbage truck blocking her view and the cops all around, she had nothing left to shoot at. So Brenda dropped her rifle and locked herself inside her home and hid. The shooting had taken around about 20 minutes. She had shot 36 times and hit 11 people. Mike Suker died at the scene, and Burton Ragg would pass away on the operating table. Despite the seriousness of their wounds, Officer Robert Robb and the schoolchildren were able to recover from their wounds. Only 2 would die that day. Then the phone rang. As Brenda barricaded herself in her home, she received a phone call from a journalist working for a local newspaper. He had been calling random homes looking for witnesses to talk to, and by random luck, he ended up calling the home of Brenda Spencer. When he asked why she did the shooting, she answered, "I just started shooting for the fun of it." When she was asked again why she did the shooting, she replied, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." The police negotiators had her father begging her to surrender and were gathering up her mother from her work to try and get her to beg her daughter to give up as well. However, neither parent could get through to her. The negotiator, a man named Paul Olson, spent hours talking to Brenda in an attempt to get her to surrender, while Brenda claimed that she was going to come out shooting. At around about 2:30 p.m., shortly after being offered a Burger King meal by the negotiator, she surrendered, presumably because she had gotten hungry. The fact that she had potentially surrendered for a Whopper highlights how senseless this whole incident was and how immature Spencer was, just totally detached from reality. She walked out with her hands up and placed 2 rifles on the driveway, and the police took her into custody. When the cops swept the residence, they found bottles of beer and whiskey and 200 rounds of ammunition that hadn't been used. According to Brenda, that morning she had mixed straight whiskey with epilepsy medication, which resulted in her actions that day. But initial tests revealed that she wasn't intoxicated. Brenda was taken to the homicide unit for questioning, and when the interrogation began, she was asked about her motive. She replied for fun, and that it was, quote, like shooting ducks, and also that it was an easy choice because the school children looked like, quote, a herd of cattle. In the aftermath of the incident, people were shocked. Little white girl from a nice white neighborhood shooting at a bunch of kids. Unheard of. This was not something that was supposed to happen there, and the scale of the attack and the senseless nature of the attack and the callous declaration that she didn't like Mondays all fed into the shock that was generated from the incident. Not long after the attack, as it circulated among the press, an Irish singer named Bob Geldof caught wind of the attack while at a radio station. The phrase, "I don't like Mondays," stuck in his head, and he wrote a song about the incident aptly titled, "I Don't Like Mondays." The song was an international hit, though it was reportedly never played on San Diego airwaves for perhaps understandable reasons. Despite the phrase being kinda generic, it seemingly popped up as a reference for years afterwards, most notably being in the 1985 film The Breakfast Club, having been scrawled onto the walls of the school by a student, presumably, in the opening. Though there doesn't seem to be a connection between the incident and the famous Garfield the Cat's hatred of the day, however. In 1980, she was tried as an adult, given the severity of the crime. From the start, Brenda Spencer's defense had been considering an insanity plea, but instead opted to argue that she had grown up in a severely dysfunctional environment. They said that her crime was a reflection of her trauma, and there was a lot of psychoanalyzing going on in this case. Dr. Sidney Smith, a California psychoanalyst, said, quote, "It's interesting to note that it was Brenda Spencer's father who gave her the gun. It seems the most important activity the father and daughter had together was going out and killing things." Eventually, the psychoanalyzing had to be put aside, and Brenda Spencer had to face the music. Orange County Superior Court Justice Byron K. McMillan peered down at the petite 18-year-old defendant and softly pronounced the judgment she'd been facing for more than 6 months. 25 years to life, McMillan said. Life. 25 years before she could appeal for parole. Her age alone was what saved her from the death penalty. Spencer was sent to a youth offender facility and then, a little while later, was sent off to an adult prison, where she remains today. The only routine visitor of hers was her father. While Brenda Spencer was locked up, it didn't make anything easier for the surviving victims. The students were understandably traumatized. They were shot or witnessed classmates get shot and saw both their well-liked janitor and principal die in front of them. One of the children who was shot gave testimony at a parole hearing for Brenda Spencer years later. He stated that he was climbing the stairs and saw the bodies of the principal and the custodian. Then he fainted when he was hit by a bullet. The bullet had passed an inch away from his heart and exited out on the other side. He was able to survive, but was traumatized afterwards, convinced that Brenda Spencer could be waiting for him when he was trying to go to school. Byrne Ragg, the principal, had a loving family, a wife and a daughter. His widow kept their home the exact way it was when he left for work that morning all those years ago. Mike Zucker, the custodian, was known by the kids as Mr. Mike and was a World War II veteran. According to his son, his widow never fully recovered from losing him. In prison, unsurprisingly, Spencer was not much of a bother. She was sent to the California Institution for Women in Chino, where she worked in repairing electronic equipment before moving over to work with forklifts. She reappeared in the news in 1993 for her first shot at parole. This is when Brenda Spencer, for the first time, began an elaborate campaign of theory crafting and bullshitting to excuse what she did. In 1993 and every parole hearing afterwards, she provided contradictory information that changes with each and every hearing. In 1993, Spencer said she had been hoping that the police would shoot her, and that she had been using PCP and alcohol during the crime. However, drug testing done by the police say otherwise. There's been discussion of a second test that's come up positive for something, but I haven't seen any information about this, so I can't comment on it. But it doesn't matter either way, because she's long since abandoned any claim of PCP use and says that it was marijuana and alcohol that day, not PCP. In 1993, she claimed that she had been hallucinating and saw commandos in paramilitary gear advancing at her from the schoolyard, so she began to shoot. She also claimed that the SWAT had lied about how many shots they had fired, and tried to put forth the theory that the children and the school staff were hit by bullets from SWAT and not her, which is pretty despicable to allege. The next time she went to a parole hearing, unsurprisingly, the story had changed again. The reason why is because she was lying and telling tall tales, as Brenda Spencer was always known to do. During the attack, she told the reporter who called her, "I've got into some fights, but they usually don't last long. I usually open their skulls with a cleaver." It goes without saying that this never happened. It was a figment of her imagination. She lied about pretty much every aspect of the case, and the details changed with each and every hearing. Spencer claimed that she had never even leaked the plan of the attack to her longtime crime partner, Brant Fleming. But this is contradicted by Fleming. "I went over there Saturday, and I visited with her. She said that she was going to do something real big Monday. She said, 'Wait until Monday and see what I'm going to do. It might even be big enough to make the news.'" Spencer claimed that she was talking about a block party that was supposed to be happening a few streets over. She also ironically said that Brant Fleming just liked to get attention, so he would talk big to get people's attention, which, ironically, she was known to do. Spencer had also claimed that she had been hearing voices since around about the age of 12, something that is missing from most of the commentary on her. One of the few constants in her parole hearings is that she was subjected to both physical and, unfortunately, sexual abuse as well by her father, Wallace Spencer, something that she has maintained consistently since 2001. The physical abuse was not corroborated by anyone in the family, nor was the sexual abuse, but given that that sort of abuse often occurs behind closed doors, we can't really be certain. And also, I don't want to litigate the claim. And as much as Brenda Spencer does love to lie, it's very much possible that she's telling the truth on that one. Also, one additional thing to consider regarding that, Wallace Spencer remarried almost immediately after Brenda's imprisonment to her former juvie cellmate named Sheila, who looked so much like Brenda that people thought that Brenda had been released from jail at first. Ew. The fact that when Wallace Spencer died in 2016 and handed off a lump sum of $200,000 and life rights to the house he was living in when he died, even after the accusations, seems to suggest that something was going on there. Time kept passing on by. 1993, 2001, 2005, 2016, 2022, 2025. Each and every time she's been up for parole, she's been denied. The next time she's up for parole would be in 2028. She would be 64 years old if she was released and would likely move into the home where she had committed her crime in, since she was given life rights to the place when her father died. Brenda Spencer was a trailblazer for all the wrong reasons. She was the first high-profile school shooter of a primary school, and was one of the first shooters after Charles Whitman's attack in 1966. To some, Brenda Spencer is the mother of all shooters, potentially inspiring several attacks after her. In 2001, Spencer even admitted to feeling partly responsible for the rise of shootings at schools, wondering each time that she heard about a shooting if they were inspired by her. Since that day in 1979, shootings at American schools have become shockingly common. We've gotten used to them. Back when it happened, the event itself was notable and strange. An attack like that these days has unfortunately become commonplace. However, it was the bizarre, senseless nature of Spencer's actions that led to a song and the enduring infamy of Brenda Spencer. No matter what she did, no matter where she'd go, she would always be the girl who hated Mondays, and that by itself made her notable. Even all these years later, San Diego still bears the scars of Brenda Spencer's rampage. The Cleveland Elementary School was closed in 1983 due to declining enrollment rates, and it was repurposed as a private and charter school on different occasions, with no institution ever staying for very long. In 2018, it was demolished, and the memorial plaque for the victims was moved down the street. Brenda Spencer's childhood home now faces a housing development of semi-suburban homes that are all worth well over $1 million. Brenda Spencer is still locked up, waiting for a freedom that will never come. She has spent almost 50 years of her life behind bars. Everyone connected to the incident, the victims' families, Brenda's family, and Brenda herself, forever live in the aftermath of those 20 minutes of violence that Brenda Spencer unleashed on that fateful day in 1979, allegedly because she hated Mondays. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing the video. Also, feel free to check out my Twitch and stream VOD channel. All links are in the description. Without further ado, check out this video. It's pretty good. Good stories only. Thank you.